Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a fascinating and frankly a deeply unsettling journey into a city that is suffering, well, an existential architectural meltdown. We're in Florence, a place you think of as, permanent artistry. But the reality we're exploring today is about decay, disappearance, and this bizarre phenomenon that really forces us to redefine what we even mean by reality.
And we have a mountain of sources for this: architectural notes, philosophical treatises, even police reports.
Right. And our mission here is to unpack the story of Maestro Corvino, Marius, and the impossible monument he was tasked to build.
The setting is absolutely crucial to get right from the start. The sources place us in the middle of what they call the glass transition.
The glass transition.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the very core of Florence, the marble, the limestone, the statues, these centuries-old facades undergoing what one source beautifully calls a molecular betrayal.
Molecular betrayal. Wow.
It means these materials are slowly and just, inexorably turning transparent.
Okay, hold on. Is this like hard science fiction? Or are we talking about some kind of psychological state that's just manifesting physically? How do you even tell the difference?
And that is the absolute core tension of this entire deep dive. The sources are clear. It's a literal physical transparency, but it's also universally understood as a metaphor.
A metaphor for what?
For consciousness itself collapsing into pure transparency. I mean, if everything is visible, right? No hidden corners, no secrets, then the line between your internal thoughts and external reality just breaks down.
A mystery is gone.
And the collective mind is approaching a total breakdown.
Which, okay, that sets up this completely impossible commission. So, enter our protagonist, Maestro Corvino, Marius, an architect known not for what he builds, but for the profound absences he designs.
Right, and he's approached by the directorate. This is the governing body that's responded to the crisis by becoming hyper-obsessed with documentation, with control.
They want to write everything down before it vanishes.
They hire him to perform the most paradoxical task you can imagine. They want a monument to the last human thoughts.
The last one.
Their logic is chilling. They believe that once every thought, every feeling is visible and documented, the human mind will just stop generating anything new, anything original.
It'll become a, what do they call it, a perfect loop eating its own tail.
Exactly. They want a physical marker for the moment originality dies.
And the instruction he gets is this three-word koan, build the absence.
Build the absence.
So this is the key to our deep dive for you, the listener. We are unpacking how Marius even begins to handle this paradox. We're exploring his whole concept of negative space construction and tracing how he physically builds what might have been.
To even get there, we have to understand his background, his philosophy. Marius always operated under this principle of void engineer.
Void engineer.
Yeah. He believed great architecture wasn't about, imposing a shape on the world. It was about discovering the latent structure, the support that was inherent in the stone's nature, that was already there.
And now he has to apply that to nothing, to absence itself.
He's tasked with revealing the structure of the void.
So if the directorate wants an absence, how does an architect who designs things that aren't there? I mean, where does he even begin? He needs materials, but the normal materials are failing. They're turning to glass.
Precisely. And his search leads him to two, well, they're non-material, but quasi-physical elements. The first is shadows.
Shadows.
As the marble and limestone become translucent, their shadows don't have a surface to land on anymore, but instead of just disappearing, they condense, they gain substance.
He literally harvests them.
Yeah.
This sounds physically impossible. What kind of equipment do you even use to collect condensed darkness?
The sources describe this very specialized, almost alchemical method. He uses black velvet soaked in silver nitrate and rainwater.
Okay.
And this mixture acts like a super absorbent membrane. He uses it to capture and store these concentrated shadows from iconic objects just as they're reaching that near translucence.
So we're talking about the distilled darkness of disappearing history. The shadow of the left hand of David. The shadows under the Laurentian library staircase. Its historical weight made physical.
Exactly. And the second material is even stranger. And it ties directly back to that commission, unspent light.
Unspent light.
And this isn't just, dimness. It's described as a luminous, mercury-bright fluid. And it accumulates in the deep, forgotten corners of buildings, places where sunlight had genuinely never reached in centuries.
This is where that idea of the last human thought really comes into play, isn't it? Because the sources say this unspent light is crystallized possibility.
Yeah.
It's the luminous residue of intentions you never acted on, Words you never spoke, plans never executed. It's potential made into a substance.
It is the complete opposite of the directorate's obsession with documentation. They're trying to capture every actual thought, and Marius is collecting everything that could have been.
If you could hold all the decisions you nearly made in your hand, that substance would be unspent light.
While he's doing this, collecting the substance of the unrealized, he gets an assistant, surveyor Agneta.
Right, she's initially assigned to just monitor him for the directorate, to document his work.
But she quickly realizes what their true plan is. They want to use this monument as a cognitive mirror. They want to use it to freeze consciousness, to turn the human mind into that perfect crystal cathedral of frozen cognition.
So she becomes his ally.
She becomes his conscience, his catalyst. She realizes that standard metric documentation is failing in this collapsing reality. And as the structure starts to take shape, she shifts her own documentation to measure irrational distance.
Irrational distance. I love that concept. But if Agneta is supposed to be the government surveyor, I mean, imagine the spreadsheet they must have tried to build from that data.
Oh, exactly. Her private notebook records measurements based on feeling, not metrics. Distances like 3 heartbeats and a sigh.
Or the width of a word unsaid.
Yes. And this signals the entire project's pivot. It's moving completely away from physics, where distance is rigid, to metaphysics, where distance is a function of emotional commitment.
Okay, so now we get to the shocking core of the project, the method itself, the unbuild. And this isn't just strategic stone removal, it's a philosophical statement. He starts targeting the most ancient structures, like the cathedrals, Santa Maria Novella.
The goal, as Marius puts it, is liberation. He wants to free the trapped prayers. All the intentions, the actions, the hopes that have been fossilized in the material of these buildings for centuries. It's like spiritual deconstipation. He's relieving the city of its historical pressure.
And he's so meticulous about it.
Yeah.
He removes exactly 43 stones from the western wall of Santa Rita Novella.
Yeah.
But here's the paradox you have to wrestle with. The voids he creates are load-bearing.
Right.
Marius proves that these absences distribute weight more elegantly than the solid material ever could.
It's a profound realization. He's proving the structure isn't defined by the stone, but by the distribution of the negative space. He's building through subtraction. He's suggesting that faith, or intention represented by that void, is the real structural support.
So he's basically proving that stability is just a distribution of belief, not mass. Because this leads directly to the most critical action in the sources. The baptistry Job.
The narrative pivot.
In chapter 7, he targets the absolute heart of Florence.
Yes, he descends into the crypt of the baptistry and he removes 12 ancient foundation stones. These are pre-Etruscan. They were arranged as a kind of spiritual compass for the city's founding. They carried immense ontological weight.
Let's just pause on that term, ontological weight. For you listening, what does that actually mean here? Is it just that they're heavy, or do they hold the fact of the city's identity?
It's the latter. They anchored the city's collective sense of being. Ontology is the study of being. So if you remove the foundation stones, you're not just removing structural support, you're removing the self-evident truth that Florence exists as Florence.
They were the buried, unquestioned history.
And the immediate consequences were terrifying, because those 12 stones anchored the collective identity. Removing them caused a sudden citywide identity crisis.
People in Florence began forgetting who they were, where they lived, even who their families were. The sources describe it as the story of the self beginning to unbuild from its own foundation.
It's a total structural destabilization of the psyche happening all at once across the entire population. It just proves our sense of self isn't an isolated thing. It is literally grounded in shared physical anchors.
And this sets the stage for the final construction. Marius brings his materials together. He's released all this historical and psychological burden. So the base layer for those 12 recovered baptistry stones, now at his monument site. It's made from that dark, viscous substance of accumulated weight.
The released obligation, the burden of being the city's foundation.
And the mortar holding it all together, filling the gaps between the stones, is that mercury-bright, unspent light, pure, unrealized intention. So the foundation is released burden, and the binder is pure potential.
Amazing.
Now comes the climax. The directorate shows up, led by Director Castellane. And he's described as animate certainty.
Animate certainty.
Which implies he's less of a man and more of a walking ideology, completely devoted to documented, glass-hard truth. And he just sees Marius' structure as rubble and negation.
But Marius has achieved his goal. He defines the monument not as a tomb for the last human thought, but as an escape route from thinking itself,
Mm.
and a resurrection machine for incomplete thoughts and actions.
So the activation is called the Night of All Selves. Marius uncaps this large vessel of unspent light. It flows between the 12 foundation stones, and they begin to sing the intentions they've carried for centuries.
This is the reversal. The light illuminates the directorate, who are entirely defined by their certainty, and the light reveals the gap in their own certainty.
They see they're wrong.
Suddenly, they realize their devotion to documented truth made their certainty glass-hard and dead. They are confronted, physically, by their own unspent potential.
And this moment allows Agneta Lenz's final transformation. She stands at the center of the 12 stones, having measured the metaphysics of the city. She becomes the threshold consciousness.
She stabilizes. She's no longer collapsing into glass. She's transforming into something that conceals even as it reveals. She becomes the living hinge, the boundary between what is actual, the stone, and what is potential. The unspent light.
In the monument, it instantly begins its work. The sources detail the transformations of the first visitors. I mean, if I stand in front of this thing and regret a choice I made 10 years ago, is the version of me who chose differently literally standing right beside me? That's what it proves, right?
That is precisely the terrifying realization. The baker sees the exact complex folding pattern for the bread she never baked, preserved in that luminous gap. The magistrate sees the version of himself who made the right life-saving judicial choice, and that version exists just as solidly as the one who failed.
And the most profound example, the young mother who miscarried sees the child she lost graduate university fall in love in the space between two stones.
The structure is a metaphysical microscope. It proves that possibility, what might have been, has the exact same ontological weight as actuality.
It's teaching people how to live in superposition. They have to hold all their possible parallel selves at the same time. They're saved from collapsing into the singular dead certainty of documented fact. But now they face the challenge of infinite potential.
Which is where Professor Wirth's theory comes in, 5 years later. She's trying to explain this scientifically. She posits that Marius built the first true four-dimensional architecture.
Four-dimensional.
The gaps don't just exist in 3 dimensions, but in time itself, as pure duration, as a field of simultaneous possibilities. The monument is a window into the timeline that didn't happen, making those unlived lives not imaginary, but demonstrably real.
And then, 10 years after the unbuild, Marius himself undergoes this physical shift. His body starts developing the same structural gaps. It becomes porous. And through these voids, other versions of himself, the mason, the monk, the Roman architect, they become visible to people around him. He is becoming structurally like the monument he built.
Which leads to his final, most profound act, the final unbuild. He goes back to the baptistry crypt, and he transfers the void aspect of his own body, his now plural consciousness, into those 12 ancient foundation voids beneath the city.
He becomes a distributed consciousness. So there are now 12 Mariuses, each holding a different aspect of himself. And, importantly, he becomes the hidden, grounded actual that perpetually balances Agneta's fluid potential at the monument.
The architecture now has a living foundation.
And finally, a role for the rest of us is established. The witness. A young woman, Clara, takes his place at the observation post. Her task is to record the unrecordable. Just sit at the threshold until the boundary between observer and observed dissolves, and she too becomes part of the architecture. So if we loop all the way back to the beginning, Florence stabilized, but not by reversing the collapse or returning to opacity. It became a living transparency, a city that holds both clarity and mystery, both the singular present and infinite potential.
The monument to the last human thought became a testament to the unfinishable, eternal process of becoming.
It resisted singularity, documentation, finality.
And it proves that the structure is built from the gaps of what we failed to do, yet those failures are just as real.
So if our greatest creations are built from our absence and our incompletion, and if the very foundation of reality, represented by the distributed Mariuses, must be a hidden, plural, undocumentable void,
then what essential aspect of ourselves do we destroy every single time we insist on singularity, on clarity, and the documented certainty of a single life?
We'll leave you with this. What unspent light are you carrying? And what architecture does its release make possible in your own life? That's all for this deep dive.